With no further ado, I welcome in Lori Saine, again, Weld County Commissioner and also candidate for the U.S. congressional seat in the newly formed 8th Congressional District. She's former state representative for House District 63. Lori Saine, welcome to the program. How are you?
I'm very well, Jimmy. Thank you for having me on this morning.
Lori, let's dive in here. First, I want to get to the rally on Saturday down in Frederick, but I also want to give you a chance. Late last afternoon, it barely made the evening news cycle. There was a federal judge that ruled in your favor and in Representative Williams' favor, and you kind of got the governor and the state legislature Democrats slapped on the wrist yesterday. Tell us about that ruling.
Well, Jimmy, essentially, the state violated my constitutional rights as a state lawmaker and allowed me to ask for what is provided in our state constitution to allow a bill to be read at length. And that right is provided to any member. They denied that. And yesterday was a huge victory. It's a huge defeat for Governor Polis and all the anti-gun left, including Yadira Caraballo, who voted for the bill, who's also running for Congressional District 8. But that ruling essentially, I mean, if they're willing to violate my constitutional rights, Jimmy, as a state lawmaker, they were absolutely looking to violate your constitutional rights under the red flag law. So this just goes to prove that, due process is important, not only in procedures in the state house, but also in your home. And so this exposes a lot about the left, especially if you remember one of their arguments last time, Jimmy, was that, they waited too long. They used the defensive latches. They waited too long to allow us to fix our mistake. So they knew they violated the Constitution and still proceeded. So what's going to happen from here? We won on 2 of 3 points. One is standing. Obviously, Representative Williams and I have standing under state constitution to ask for a bill to be read at length. And third, it'll be merits, which if they challenge the bill, Jimmy, we're going to win on the merits. So at this point, this is just a huge victory, a huge upset. It may nullify the entire law. And that's honestly, an unconstitutional law shouldn't stand, especially one that is passed unconstitutionally.
The voice of Lori Saine, now candidate for CDA, Congressional District 8, the newly formed Congressional District. Also, she's a Weld County Commissioner. She was a House District 63 in the Colorado State House representative for many years. Colorado Appeals Court yesterday reinstated a lawsuit that filed by Lori Saine and Representative Dave Williams and the Colorado gun rights groups challenging the red flag law. The lawsuit was filed in 2019. It argues that a majority of Democrats in the House denied lawmakers their constitutional right to have the red flag legislation read in its entirety. The bill was signed into law, and the Court of Appeals says, yeah, you can sue over this. You have standing, and you may have some merits. Let's have a court case. So that is Lori Saine talking about that. Lori, there's another battle that I've been talking about on this program for the last many days, and that is another bill that Jared Polis signed into law. And he signed it, and now it's not a Court of Appeals that's slapping him down for signing it, something that might have been unconstitutional the way that it was passed, but it's a Native Americans suing him, saying what you signed is discriminatory. You have forbidden us as Native Americans from ever having imagery or symbolism represented on a sideline or in a school. You've basically deemed any kind of our icons or imagery representing our heritage are now considered bigoted, and it must be hate speech, and we can't have any of that up. And there's a rally this coming Saturday. Again, Jared Polis just signs these laws, not realizing that maybe there's going to be some accountability and ramification for what he signs into action.
That's right. And one of our Frederick High parents reached out to me earlier this month and said, we need some help. The Native American Guardians are looking for attorneys to join them in this lawsuit to overturn this terrible bill. And this cancel culture, the left, people are waking up, Jimmy, to the fact that the left have gone completely insane. And this is just another example of canceling culture. And if the Native American Guardians Association, which they told me they represent most of the First Nations, They don't want to get rid of their proud heritage. And this is the warrior symbol at Frederick High. I don't know if you've seen it or not. I think you have, since you have a son that probably goes there. It's very respectful. It's basically a spear with a feather, and they've got some beautiful Native American imagery with these bronze statues. It's very respectful. This has been their symbol, the warriors, for I don't know how many generations of Coloradans and those who lived in the Carbon Valley. And the Native American Guardians want to preserve this heritage because they don't want to be canceled. That's the whole point of this lawsuit. Plus, if you ask some of these parents how many millions of dollars that this school has had to spend to eradicate that proud heritage. So one of the ideas I approached them with is maybe having a rally for the parents to actually give them a voice, because the school district is not listening to them. They want to keep that warrior's heritage. So we are going to be gathering in Frederick right off of Tipple Parkway and Colorado Boulevard, 10 a.m. this Saturday, if you want to join us.
It's right across from Frederick High School. You know, the sad thing is, not only is the heritage, and I know Native American Guardian Association, they say they're not opposed. They don't want caricatures and people painted red face dancing on a sideline, that kind of stuff. But they don't mind the imagery that shows their heritage, and this will forbid it. And then you have schools like, let's say, a Frederick High School or a Yuma school. If the bill is so draconian that Polis has signed into action that Frederick's logo is the letter F, and then there's an arrow going through it. If that logo remains, let's say, in a tile floor as a mosaic, they've got to chisel that thing up with a jackhammer. It must be replaced. They can't have it on stationary. Same thing for all the 26 schools that Jared Polis has targeted. $1 million per school is what kind of taxpayer dollars each of them are going to get. Even if they don't have the image of a person's face or an actual Native American, even if they just have an arrow, they've got to chisel up their hardwood floors or their tile floors, everything. I mean, that's how draconian this thing is.
And those millions of dollars should be going into education, not canceling culture. And as a wife of a veteran and served in Desert Storm, he didn't serve to cancel our culture. And by the way, he's going to get a steak and a beer this evening as a big thank you.
Well, Lori, I don't ask people's vaccination status. I don't care. It's between you and your doctor. It's none of my business. I believe in HIPAA. But Jared Polis said the best way you can honor your veterans is to go get a shot today. So check up with all the veterans and see if they agree with Jared Polis, because evidently Jared Polis knows veterans like no one else. I guess he thinks the best way to honor them is to not keep them company, not get them a steak and a beer, but go get a shot at the Walgreens.
Yeah, the left has gone completely insane. If that's honoring the service of our country, that's the message that he wants to bring. It's just people are waking up, Jimmy, and the Republican Party is now become and must become the party of parental rights, because all the things they're shoving down the line, it has nothing to do with education, has everything to do with canceling our culture and its critical race theory, teaching these young kids that they're actually racist. Let me just circle back on one thing. Maybe I shouldn't say circle back because somebody ruined that. But back to reading bills at length. Let me give you one example how important that is. And the reason why that's in our Constitution is to prevent fraud, trickery, deceit, subterfuge, and the enactment of bills, and to prevent hasty and ill-considered legislation. Let me give you one example. As a freshman legislator, I was standing up in the well, and I was actually describing this graphic sex education. And you may ask, well, why were you doing that, Representative Saine? Well, the chair told me, tried to gavel me down, said, you need to be germane to the bill, Representative Saine. I turned around, looked at him point blank, and said, I'm reading your bill. They don't even read their bills, Jimmy.
Wow.
They don't care. Any special interest that can write up a bill, they pass it through, doesn't matter how many pages it is, and that's why it's important to make sure we slow down the process so people know what they're actually getting, and that includes the taxpayers and the voters and the parents of this state.
The voice of Lori Saine, Weld County Commissioner, former representative from House District 63 of the state legislature, again, Weld County Commissioner now, running for the newly ensconced Congressional District 8. Lori Saine, if people want to follow you, learn more about you and your candidacy for Congress next year, how do they do that?
They can visit me at Lori for Freedom, LORIFOR freedom.com, and they can also find me at Lori for Freedom on Facebook.
LoriForFreedom.com and Lori for Freedom, LORI, on Facebook. Lori Saine, if we don't talk before, I will see you Saturday at the rally in Frederick, Colorado, and hopefully the governor and the St. Vrain School District will pay attention and learn that maybe this would be something they should do. Maybe they should practice education rather than eradication. Lori Saine, thanks for hopping on the program. I appreciate you. LoriForFreedom.com or Lori for Freedom on the old Facebook page. Let me also point out that this bill that Jared Polis signed targets, I think, 26 schools. There's 26 schools. And each of them have an allotment to have $1 million to eradicate any Native American symbols, like Frederick High School is the letter F with an arrow through it. That's very offensive to Jared. He's very upset by that. Very bothered by that. I wonder if they use the symbol of a Native American getting a vaccination. Would that make Jared happy? Maybe they use a Native American person getting a vaccination. Maybe they could keep their symbology, their symbols and icons. But hey, by the way, $1 million per school. Let's say there's 26 schools. Taxpayer money, for the most part, $26 million to get rid of these images. All you teachers union hacks out there that say we don't spend enough money on education, Colorado's about to spend $26 million ripping up hardwood floors, painting tracks across Colorado, jackhammering up mosaics in the floor, changing letterheads and uniforms because Jared Polis is into eradication, not education. $26 million, Colorado. Where's the teachers union squawking at it about right now? Do you hear them?